So everyone who's here, I hope is here for the bringing new players and new designs to the table and development session. If you need to be somewhere else, please go there whenever you need to do so. I'm Jeff Stoudinger, recently retired from the city of Asheville, and I'm the moderator for today's session. I'd like to introduce our panelists to you. At the end there in the lovely yellow shirt is Elizabeth Teague. Elizabeth is the Development Services Director for the town of Waynesville and manages building inspections, zoning compliance, historic preservation, and long-range planning activities. She served on the Haywood County Subcommittee to develop the county's affordable housing strategy, along with other municipal, county, and nonprofit staff. She is a returned Peace Corps volunteer, has a BA from Vanderbilt University, an MA from Western Carolina, and is a member of the American Institute of Certified Planners with advanced certification in transportation planning. Elizabeth recently completed the Executive Education for Sustainability Leadership program at Harvard University. Thanks for being here, Elizabeth. Next to Elizabeth is Kirk Booth. Kirk's business is the Kirk H. Booth Real Estate. Kirk is a Nashville native who's been a real estate broker in charge for 25 years. He has developed over 200 homes in the Asheville area, with most of those meeting the affordability requirements of the city of Asheville and Buncombe County. Most of his real estate development is infill housing, although he is now starting a 70-unit, 60% AMI affordable project of all one bedrooms, and I think he'll be talking about that project with us today. Kirk has been very active with the Asheville Board of Realtors. He was president of the association in 2003 and 2011, and Realtor of the Year in 2010. On a personal note, he's a graduate of Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University and holds every license in a fixed-wing aircraft. Great, Kirk. Thanks for being here. And to Kirk's side is Sarah Kimmy Grimes. Sarah is Housing Assistant Corporation of Hendersonville's Executive Director, and is very happy to serve her native Hendersonville and its many residents. She comes from a background in banking, has been involved in assisting multiple local nonprofit organizations, including serving on HAC's board for 5 years. It was during this time that she became passionate about the mission of HAC and is now able to use that passion to assist the people of Henderson County with repairs, construction, and finding affordable housing. So there are panelists today to talk about innovations and new designs. Very happy to have them. The way we're going to structure this today is we're going to give each panelist 5 minutes, 10 max, to talk about their innovations. I may get the ball rolling with some questions, but really it's your questions that we want to hear today. And so I know that we are going to end this session at 12:10. If anybody's clock watching, you can clock watch with me to try to make sure we get this going in adequate time that you can participate. So I think I'd like to start with Elizabeth, and we'll just move our way down. Elizabeth.
Thank you, Jeff. Can I stand up? Okay. Hello, everybody. So, quick question. How many of you live and work in the city of Asheville? Okay. How many of you live somewhere outside the city of Asheville but have a job in the city of Asheville? I'm from Haywood County. And if I'd asked that question in a room full of Haywood County people, there would have been a lot more hands up, because what we're seeing now regionally is these commuter patterns. And this is affecting affordable housing in the surrounding counties. So I want to send out an appreciation to the organizers for including some of us outlying counties, if you would, because really we're connected not just through commuter patterns, but now more and more socially. So this won't be a surprise to anyone, but as housing prices in Asheville have gone up, I-40 and I-26 have gotten busier. We all knew about I-26, But it's been interesting to me to get to know some of my fellow commuters. I actually live in East Asheville, and I commute to Waynesville every day. And you'll be surprised at the number of people who are living in Asheville and Buncombe County and are commuting every day. And one of the things that affordable housing, one of those challenges that we have is that housing isn't as transportable as it used to be, right? So if you're lucky enough to have a house in Asheville, you almost don't want to lose it, right? So you'll see, I think, increase in commuter patterns as time goes on. And I want to talk just briefly about the transportation housing connection. Because in urban transit systems, they have a sort of set group of routes and set funding, most of it federal. And there is going to be a need to start expanding public transit to other adjacent towns. Buncombe County has had the Black Mountain to Asheville route, which the city has sustained with a lot of goodwill towards outlying communities in Buncombe County. Warren Wilson College was a participant in that. But we have to look for transportation solutions as part of our affordable housing solution. So that's the first thing I wanted to say. The second thing I wanted to say is in Haywood County, we're a little bit like Madison County in that we are very rural and very hilly. And as beautiful as both our counties are, there is what I would call sort of a hidden homelessness problem, and it's critical. As communities that have deep family roots that are tied to land, usually you don't necessarily see the homeless problem that's there. In Haywood County, we started a conversation with all of our nonprofits to look at what are our housing issues and how can we better work together. And one of the really interesting, for me, players at the table was the social worker of the high school. And last year, there were documented 310 high school students who did not have housing. They were homeless. So where are they staying? Well, they're staying on couches. They're staying with friends. They're sort of adopted by other families. We see a lot of multi-generational households. Not that that's bad, but we have a lot of people who come back from college or the military or wherever they've been, and they're moving back with their parents at age 20 and 30 and 40. And that's not necessarily a homelessness problem, but it is reflective of the lack of choice that a lot of people have in some of these outer counties. The other thing I'll mention that's the other side of that coin is you have a lot of family land, right? And people may be cash poor and land rich. And whatever they do, they know that that land is the future for their family, and so they're not likely to turn it over to an affordable housing type subdivision. If Habitat for Humanity or our local nonprofit Mountain Projects came knocking, there wouldn't be a big response, but we are seeing some sort of bigger upper end gated community type of subdivisions, particularly in Madison County and the edge, some areas of Haywood County, and I'm not sure that that's necessarily part of the solution. The property owner gets the most for their land, so good for that family. But it's creating this disjointed housing market, if you would. So we have a lot of kind of million-dollar homes that are seasonal rentals. Some people come and live in Waynesville for 6 months out of the year, and then they go back to Florida. And we have some neighborhoods with a lot of empty big homes. And then meanwhile, we have high school students sleeping on their friend's couch. So there's a lot of disparity, and I'm sure there's other sort of stories like that throughout our region. But it is important to think regionally because I think as Haywood County begins to tackle this problem, we want to look to Asheville and Buncombe County for community partners, and here's why. We've done really well in the very upper end housing market, but we don't have a lot of developers who are willing to come in and build $150,000 to a $200,000 to a $250,000 home. We just don't have that development community in place. And so one goal for us was to figure out how do we create incentives. How do we create incentives to sort of bring those folks in? That's one. The other is infrastructure. Haywood County doesn't have water and sewer, doesn't have zoning, which you would think would be wonderful for development, but if there's no water and sewer, it doesn't get you anywhere. Waynesville does have water and sewer, but we have very strict policies about how we extend it. So the topic of the day for this group was bringing in new partners to the table. And Haywood County, I think, hadn't really, while they thought about it in terms of affordable housing being a community need that we need to attack locally, they hadn't thought about it in terms of a broader perspective, a regional perspective, and how do we serve those people who now are finding jobs in Asheville or Buncombe County? How do we serve those people who have been priced out of Asheville, Buncombe County? And so that started a really interesting conversation. And what our county commissioners did in 2016 was they pulled together a task force. And that in and of itself was a really powerful thing. And I wanted to give some kudos to Asheville, because I was here when there was the Affordable Housing Coalition. And that was a really powerful thing that happened. It was a group of nonprofits and governments, actually came out of Land of Sky Regional Council, but then became its own thing, where it just put people at the table and taught us to talk together. And there was a lot of power in Haywood County of getting the nonprofits and the governments to talk. From that process, we actually developed a housing strategy. And one of the strategies was to maintain some sort of coalition to work on this issue. And our county commission actually just gave a call for volunteers, if you would. So for Haywood County to actually form this county commission appointed coalition is a great step forward. And we hope to work with other partners in the region to look for solutions and help each other out.
Hey guys, my name is Kirk Booth, and I want to ask, who has looked for a house here in Asheville or Western North Carolina in the last 6 months? Are you familiar with the pricing for lots and houses? So what I'm about to tell you may seem a little strange to you, okay? I am from here in Asheville, and I grew up here. I've been in real estate for a long time. I have a lot of my friends out here in the audience who have helped me along the way. But when I first started, we started doing infill housing on city lots, basically. And this meant a 50 by 100 lot that may not be flat. It may not have everything perfect, but it was cheap enough for us to buy it and to build, because we were building houses that were affordable to the first-time home buyer, to the retiree, to the investor, and if things got really wacky, we could rent it. So our price point of our houses was $125,000 for a lovely home in West Asheville. As I said, this was way back. So my wise banker told me that always remember, if you're at this price point, the market can always come down to you in price. So that's kind of what we always did. We rented some, we sold some, we bought some houses with extra lots. We built on those lots and sold them, and kind of just continued on happily until one day somebody said, hey, that looks like a good business model. Why don't we go out and buy some land and build some houses and sell them? So then the land started going up because everybody was doing it. So then we kind of started saying, well, okay, the land price is higher, so we have to get more rent out of what we're building, so we'll build this thing, which is now called an ADU, but back then we called it a garage apartment. So therefore we could rent out the apartment which is the most needed housing, and increase our cash flow and make the land costs work. So I was building a group of 8 houses one time, and I was at a coffee shop meeting, and some friend of mine says, "Hey, I think I have somebody that want to buy all these houses and rent them out." I said, "Okay, well, let's do it." So we did. And I thought this person knew exactly what to do and how to do it. I come to find out they did not, and he was having a hard time renting the houses. So I said, "Oh, look at this article. There's 2,000 people on a waiting list at this HUD voucher program. I'm not sure that much about it, but maybe you should check that out." So he did, and all of a sudden, houses started renting, and people were happy, and things were great. So I said, I got to remember this because maybe someday I can use it. So somewhere in the grand year of 2007, we had I'll say we, my partners and I, had a subdivision in South Asheville, which we built about 14 houses. They sold. They were in the low 200s. Everything was great. And then we built one that was on a little bit of an odd lot, and it was $187,000. And it did not get shown. In South Asheville, brand new house, $187,000 in 2007. And we said, "Oh no, something bad's coming." Well, we had no idea what was coming. And so my wise banker, I walked in to get a new loan for a new project, and he laughed at me first and then said, "Son, we're in a hurricane. We don't know what's going to happen or where we're all going to land." So since that time, we said, I think we should just build and rent houses and hold them, and we can control the cost, we can control what we're buying, we can do the cash flow analysis, make the bankers happy and everyone else. So since we did that, I used the model that I gave the other investor, and we started renting out to people with a HUD voucher, homeward bound clients and other agencies in town. And there's nothing like seeing the kids come in and the parents come in to a brand new house that they can afford and get to work. It's transportationally correct as much as possible, and we're still doing that. So that's one thing. And now we're graduating on to a 70-unit complex of all one-bedrooms because of certain reports sanctioned by the city of Asheville. That's the most needed are the one-bedrooms. So we're doing 7 buildings of 10 units here in Asheville, and it's a big project for us and our team, and it's starting to come together. We hope to have it online early, if not the end of this year, early next year. So that's me.
My name is Sarah Grimes. I am the Executive Director of Housing Assistance Corporation. We will be celebrating our 30th anniversary next year. We have only been in Henderson County to date, but our 30th anniversary is going to time out with an expansion to our neighboring county, Polk County, which I'll talk a little bit about too. We focus on home repair. That's how we started. We've helped thousands and thousands of people in Henderson County stay in their homes safely and healthily as long as possible. That's our root mission of what we do, and all our fundraising efforts go to that. We've also completed 291 units of multifamily housing, with another 89 coming on, hopefully beginning of next year. And we just completed 8 this year. We also do single-family homes. We have 17 under construction right now. We do approximately 16 a year is what we try to do on the single family. We have a general contractor on staff that builds those. Our homeowners use USDA rural development product. We have a housing counselor on staff that walks those people, gets them ready for home ownership, and then we build the houses with them. So that's a little bit about the background. We have so many partners in the room. Pretty much everything I'll talk about today is the benefits of partnership. Denise Long, I was lucky enough to help with the United Way campaign for a year. United Way is a huge supporter of housing assistance. Chris Naughton with the consortium. We're working on a HUD D4 221 guarantee program that the consortium is behind. We're ready to get that one finished up. Trina Stokes with Council on Aging. Kieran Rowe with Conserving Carolina Carolina, and I think Chris back there with Thermal Belt, and Angie in the back of the room with Habitat. So we have partnered with all these different people in the room. The 89 apartments that will be coming online, that is a mixed income development. It has portions that are affordable. The rents are only as high as they have to be for it to be a self-supporting development. It has been tough as you have to put out all the upfront costs to the development. All of the architecture plans, all of the engineering. It's hundreds of thousands of dollars that you kind of pay up front before you can ever get to the closing. But we've been able to pull it off. So we're very excited about that. We are also expanding into Polk County. Kieran Rowe called me, I think, about this time last year. They purchased over 1,000 acres in Polk County, beautiful mountainside. And it was before it had been bought by a for-profit developer that was going to put over 800 homes, I think, there. The conservancy, it had a huge conservancy value, but the lower part was not something that they wanted. They wanted to do something truly for the community, so they are willing to negotiate the property to us for something reasonable that we'll be able to do affordable housing on. That will be 30 to 60 acres that we will be building single-family homes in Polk County. Many partnerships on that that we're looking forward to. The county is very supportive, very in need of affordable housing, very easy to work with. We're also partnering with another nonprofit looking to build 48 affordable apartment units. Looking at another nonprofit to do transitional housing. We have done that before with Safe Light in Henderson County. And we're also working with the school system to incorporate their construction class. They have about 75 kids that are in the construction class down there in Polk County. Life skills is a huge focus for the county and the school system, especially in construction, as about 90 million construction workers will be needed in the world by 2020. So we're taking children in an impoverished county, giving them some really on-the-job skills because we have a general contractor and 3 construction workers on our staff that will be assisting with the program. So we'll be doing that all with the Conserving Carolina property. So it's very exciting.
Great, thank you all panelists. So three interesting and very different approaches. We have a rural county that is looking at a coalition of interests that has developed a housing strategy that has been adopted by their county commissioners, recognizing for the first time really in that county the need for affordable housing and its impacts on local economic development, transportation services, human services. We have a jack-of-all-trades developer who has really figured out how to use, and I'll say this from my prior knowledge of the city of Asheville, how to use the incentives that are provided by a local government and combining it with the use and housing. We heard, if you were here last night, you heard that 252 housing choice vouchers went unused in the city of Asheville last year because the households could not find rentals that were available to them in the price range or in the condition that needed to be rented. Here's a developer, a private sector developer, who is using the combination of private capital, the broad skill of knowledge of the real estate market and development, and then using those government programs to house those with the least income in our community who have the greatest need for housing. That's his innovation. And then we have a very innovative and nimble nonprofit organization that is engaged in a wide variety of development, including, which I think is very interesting, a nonprofit organization that is really trying to make a mixed income development work, as well as bringing a wide variety of housing types to its service area. So three interesting innovations. I think I'll start by asking Kirk. Kirk, one of the issues that keeps on coming up has been the rising cost environment. And that thing, it's on the cost side of things, whether it's land, labor, or materials, that is making it harder and harder for developers to build affordable housing. How have you as a private sector developer addressed those issues?
I have been lucky with working with a lot of people with real estate needs down through the years that I've worked with and talked to, and eventually sales of land come through, whether it's generational, not wanting to sell, or this was our grandfather's land, and at some point down the line it happens, and I happen to be there. It's hard to make a living doing that and waiting for the prices to come at a certain rate. It is very hard, almost impossible in the city, unless you are just working with people to be able to afford land to buy. Most lots are anywhere from 50 to 100,000 in the city of Asheville. That's for a 50 by 100 lot. It's very hard, if you were here earlier, to see the rents, to rent for that and to pay that much for the land. You just can't do it. So you have to go to multiple units or more density on the lots or something to where you can have somewhat of an advantage as a private developer, and probably for any habitat and everybody else who's out here looking for land, mountain housing. We're all kind of looking at the same dirt, trying to figure out what we can do with it. The only other thing is when you find a piece of property is, what can I do differently than you can that can maybe make it work for me and you didn't figure out, and that's bad to say, but that's just the market. Sometimes there's incentives the cities put out that's in black and white on the website that you may not know about because you've never done it, or it's the first time, or what have you. And here again, that's hard to make a living trying to figure out properties and how to parcel it up and things. But that is certainly one of the challenges, is anybody who's developed up on the panel or you out there, the land cost is a big issue, and you have to find a way to tackle that, because you're backing into the project starting with the rents. Most people say, here's a piece of dirt, how much is it going to cost to build it, and how much can we rent it for? Well, when you're doing affordable, you're kind of tied to what the rents are already. Therefore, you can only build so much. So the silver bullet of how do we fix this is not quite that easy, because we're in a changing market. As Margie said earlier, with hurricanes, well, hey, let's just raise the prices. We just had 2 or 3 hurricanes. Didn't hurt us, maybe, but we're going to raise the prices because we can. That's the manufacturers of the products, the wood, the sheetrock, everything everybody needs, because it is needed in the places that did get hurt. And all the people who have the product ship it to where they need it. So therefore, the challenges of the dirt is probably the biggest, and with the city coming in with the bond and other things, incentives to maybe help us developers, because now we're screaming saying, we can't even buy the land. We can't make it work if we're doing 70 units. If we're building a house, with a garage apartment, we need help. So the city has come a long way in helping me do that, and I'm sure other people, as Gordon mentioned before, Chip, that is doing the project on the Hilliard piece. He couldn't have done it without the city's help. So it is, I know it's been said all day, all morning, but it is a public-private partnership that has to occur if we want this affordable housing to get somewhat goals met.
I think this is a question both for Kirk and for Elizabeth, as with her long background in planning and zoning. I'm sure you know about the zoning changes that are being considered for the city to make more infill lots available. And I guess I'm really excited about that for the affordable housing infill of in stable neighborhoods especially. But has the city been able to work with you, maybe even without the zoning, to make those kinds of lots available with, alterations or adaptations in some way? And how do we think about keeping the developers from grabbing those lots when they become available?
If you can tell me that, you can come on board. The thing with housing and with the lots, the developers getting those, the only solution would be for the city to come in and help a developer land bank that lot or that land. But, I can't go to the city and say, hey, I think this is a great thing to buy. Let's just buy it and we'll figure it out later. You're going to have to go with a plan with your project, whether it's a house or multifamily or whatever it may be, so they can say, that sounds like a good idea. Because the city is going to say, we have to be fair in what we're doing with this land, and if we're going to spend the money that we've set aside that everybody approved, we'll make sure we're doing the best we can with it. So that's kind of what I would see as far as how do we keep the developers from grabbing it. And realize, I used to say this, I said earlier in my coffee meeting, I have a coffee meeting every Thursday of diverse realtors. Me, if something comes up that's a hot item or a listing or something, we could talk about it. We can all make one phone call to our clients, and it's gone. So all the realtors out there are looking for land and housing for their clients, so it's hard to do that. As far as the city helping with incentives on the lot, what they're doing now on some smaller lot widths, driveway changes, all that is a help. So they're trying to help in the infill lots as much as they can. But remember, a lot of plats I work on the city were platted in 1925. So here's a lot. Oh, this one's 40 feet. Well, this one's 52 feet. This one's 60 feet. Usually on the end of a street. If you get to the beginning or the end of the street, it's a lot width. So they've helped in changing some of that lately, and also helping with some driveways, which will help us be able to put maybe something on that we couldn't earlier.
A couple of comments. One is a very interesting piece of land development history, which is a lot of North Carolina was platted in the 20s and 30s by people who weren't here. It was people in boardrooms laying out these very nice flat grid types of patterns in mountain communities. And previously I was the planning director for Black Mountain, and we had a lot of these things. And people would buy 2 or 3 lots, and they'd put their house in the middle. However, in North Carolina, through the courts, the rule of thumb is that if there's a pre-existing lot that someone owns, they have a right to build on that lot. They still have to meet setbacks, but they have a right to build on that lot. So one of the challenges we looked at in Black Mountain, and now we're looking at in a couple of places in Waynesville, is, okay, how do we take advantage of some of these smaller lots that were laid out in a boardroom and were maybe meant to be purchased with 2 or 3 other lots, but you know what? In today's building world, that could still be developed as a home. And if there's a zoning barrier to making that happen, let's work on that barrier so that it's not a barrier anymore. The second thing I'll just note is in Waynesville, we started working with the county to look at foreclosures and where were properties that had sewer and water that had been foreclosed on and that were maybe sitting empty. And what we found in Waynesville was a lot of the properties that we were getting complaints about because the grass was too high or the roof was falling in were foreclosures, and we're still dealing with a lot of them. But if we can work cooperatively with either the private or the nonprofit sector to try and move these properties through the foreclosure process, if the government can maybe take on some of the title search work and all of that to then get it to the courthouse steps, that creates that land opportunity that the development community needs for their starting point. We had a piece of property that we really wanted Habitat for Humanity to partner with us on. And unfortunately, it was in the floodplain. And I didn't, I just thought build it up higher, but they have a very rigorous set of what they can spend on their development costs, sort of models, and just the elevation sort of knocked them out of them being able to use that particular lot. But it was a good lesson for me in that it did show that willingness on the part of the nonprofit community to sort of think through a problem. And then, which it sounds like you did with Kieran, what a great project. What a great project. But at the same time, it also was a good lesson to realize that particularly in the nonprofit field, you have to be sensitive to what they can and can't do. Last note is everything that local government does is regulated by state statutes and the Local Government Commission. So there are a lot of great ideas there about, well, can't the town just buy this property and then we could turn it over to Kirk and he could build, single occupancy rooms? Wouldn't that be great? And it absolutely would, except local government is not empowered to just buy property for the use of private real estate development. There's a process we have to go through, and you can do it, but I think people have to be aware that sometimes it's pretty clunky for a government to go through all these steps. It's not that your boards or local elected officials aren't willing to. That's another political discussion to have, but that there are steps, and sometimes that is a problem for us because it takes so long. Whereas what HAC is doing is a really wonderful, I think nimble was the term you used, sort of a different way of doing it.
So one of the things I've been hearing today and thinking about a little bit is the question around landlords accepting Section 8 vouchers. So I'm encouraged to hear that that's something that you all are really prioritizing. And also learning that in a Dillon law state, that leverage point for requiring landlords to not discriminate on a basis of Section 8 voucher holders is very difficult here. It seems like rather than changing state law, there might be another type of motivation or leverage point to just encourage landlords to accept Section 8 vouchers so that so many aren't just going right back into the bin. And so I'm just wondering, from your perspective, as a landlord who uses that so frequently, what could be that leverage point? What could be that message? Where is the place to be able to impact local landlords to encourage them to accept those vouchers?
Okay, I think the main thing with this is education. Here's the deal. I've got a brand new house I just built, all right? And to me, we're all people. We all have credit problems and income problems and all kinds of problems. But if a Section 8 voucher holder has spent a lot of time waiting, classes, forms, going up to the office, where am I on the list? Another 6 months? I'll wait. So they've got a lot of time in on why do I as a landlord want to rent to them? Because back in the past, when we were selling houses for $125,000, and maybe a generation before me looked at Section 8 differently. I did not, because I'm like, look, a market tenant can tear your house up just as easy as a non-market tenant. If I have a person who's put in a lot of blood, sweat, and tears to get in this house, I might want to go to you more because you've got more time in it than us three saying, hey, I just got a job at the Olive Garden and you've got one over here. We could get this house and rent it, right? Until she gets married and leaves and she says, I'm going back to wherever, and here I am, and I can't pay the rent, so I'm out. Therefore, the education is with landlords is why should you do it? And that's a big thing because they don't understand. All they hear is, oh, you're going to inspect my house every year. Well, that's not a bad thing to go look at your house once a year to see what's going on. And they say, well, if we don't fix it, then they're going to not pay us. That's right. That's how it is. But on the 2nd of every month, if you do it right, guess what, Doug Tate? They just put the money right in your account. Direct deposit. Whatever the breakdown is of the housing voucher per the tenant. It all varies. But that's one reason that I do it, because I know somebody's got some time in it and somebody's got some pain in it of what it's going to take to get in here. And I know that if I have to come to you and say, what's going on with your rent, because I don't want to have to throw you out because I know you got a lot of time here. Well, I had this. Okay, well, can we work it out, or is this really a problem here? Because, and once you have that initial conversation with a tenant, everybody goes, oh, I feel so much better. And then it's fixed. But a lot of people won't do that because nobody wants to talk. Everybody just gets mad because you didn't pay your rent. Now I can't pay my mortgage. Now my bankers are on my case because I'm not making my payment, and on and on and on. So it's the education, and I think it's just the landlords going to hear it. But I think it's an old mentality that's hard to change.
Talk about Section 8?
Yes, we have, like I said, to date, we have 291 units of affordable housing, and almost all of our units, we accept Section 8 vouchers, and that's in Henderson County. Housing assistance, we're the nonprofit, we build it or contract to build it. We do not run our own management company. I think that's key to our success. I think it takes our management company is fantastic. They do a wonderful job. We never have any issues. If there is an issue, it's fixed immediately, but they're very upfront when the tenant comes in and fills out that application of the expectation to live there. And we don't have a lot of turnover. We stop taking applications after a certain point. But like I said, we don't have any issues with our Section 8 housing.
One of the things we did in our process that was really powerful was to do a sort of deep dive into what was the situation. The first task of our coalition was to make an assessment. And we found that in Haywood County, a worker earning the minimum wage, $7.25, could afford to pay $377 in rent or mortgage. A worker earning $10.42, which was the estimated mean wage of renters in Haywood County based on the data that we were working with, could afford to pay $542. The federal fair market rent for a 2-bedroom unit in Haywood County is $796. So to achieve the fair market rent value for someone earning $10.42, you'd have to work 77 hours a week, or 11 hours a day. So the Section 8 voucher program is really important because I think it's to Kirk's point, there are still these old ideas about what Section 8 means. And we have a very significant workforce of people in the fast food industry and working minimum wage in Haywood County. And we just do not have enough affordable housing, particularly enough affordable apartments. One thing that we've been struggling with as a local government is our minimum housing code, because what we do have in Waynesville is a lot of landlords who don't deal with Section 8, but they can rent somebody an old mobile home trailer for $500 a month. The problem is that mobile home trailer is 1981. It's got its HUD, it's older than 1976, but it's old, and those things start to fall apart. The roof leaks, the floors wear out, the electrical panels start to get kind of wet and dirt and rusty. And then that creates a minimum housing problem for me and our building inspectors, because we want to enforce our minimum housing code. We want to say to the property owner, hey, you really need to fix the wiring in this mobile home. You need to fix the plumbing. I was in a mobile home last month, and there was a big gaping hole in the floor in the bathroom area. Just a gigantic hole. You look down and you saw the dirt. But the problem is they're not getting annual inspections to the Section 8 housing, and they'll say, if this is what I can do, it's an old mobile home, and I'm only charging you $500 a month. And the people who are working for minimum wage or the average wage, they'll take it. They'll take that deal. And so what we're trying to do now is work with some of these landlords to get them to make repairs, even at a small level and incremental way, so that no one has to get displaced. But we're fighting for keeping people in old mobile homes. And that's a hard thing to look at. But Haywood County's not alone in that. I don't think you see that as much in the city of Asheville, but if you go anywhere out in the county, Madison County, Haywood, Polk, Henderson, you have a type of slumlord, but it's sometimes a couple of mobile homes on a gigantic lot. And that's a problem that we really are trying to tackle now, and I'm not sure I have the answers yet.
Sorry, one more thing to this that she brought. I forgot the most important point of taking a Section 8 voucher. Because when the tenant loses that $7.25 an hour job and they go tell their worker they lost their job, they'll pay me all the rent. The tenant's not displaced. I'm paid, she stays or he stays, everybody's happy. Landlords don't understand that. That's a very vital point of Section 8 vouchers.
My question is for Sarah. You were mentioning the multifamily projects that you all have, and you talked about the Section 8 tenants who are there, but I'm not sure if you mentioned your sources of funding for your affordable multifamily. And I'm interested in that. I love the idea of the partnerships that you've addressed, and it's obvious that you have enthusiasm for that, and that's working well. But as we all know, we still have a very limited supply of mechanisms for creating, developing, preserving affordable housing in this country. So how are you making the financing work for those multifamily rentals that you've developed?
We have, well, let's see, we're building our 12th development. Not one of them has the same funding. We have 4 senior developments. Some are 9% tax credit. We've used HUD grants, North Carolina Housing, let's see, United Way is a funder of ours, Community Foundation is a funder of ours, the Asheville Consortium, we've applied for the home funds. We have home funds in quite a few of our developments. We're a nonprofit, so we can, if someone donates land to us, they can take the tax deduction on that. And in our county, we can hold it for 10 years to land bank somewhat, so we have some time as far as our projects go. All of our single family to date is USDA. I will tell you, with the development that we're doing now, the mixed income development, we are doing it with a lending group. It's not a low-income housing tax credit. We were not awarded the tax credit for that development. And so we had to look at alternative ways. This mixed income development is something that a nonprofit has not tried to do before. It has been challenging, but I would do it again. We have to, it's 87% loan to cost, just like a, bank would do. We have been working with a lender. They were not represented here today, so I do have to give kudos to First Bank. They have worked with us on the Ocklawaha development and are actually developing programs for us to use for single family, to where as we get away from government funding and we get to a point where we can be self-sustainable. But I'm noticing more and more banks are working because they notice that affordable housing is a huge issue, and they are willing to work and try to get different products together to make that work. So did that answer your question? I think it's, yeah. Okay.
I'll just note that the Housing Assistance Corporation, looking at a HUD 221D4 guarantee, is very innovative. This is the program that is the HUD Non-Affordable Housing Guarantee Program, and I find it quite ironic. It's their guarantee for market rate development. It's a very, very strenuous program, but ultimately qualifying for it allows you to qualify for bank fixed rate 40-year financing. And if you're a developer, you know that, I can just tell you, in the period between 2008 and 2015, there were no multifamily developments in Asheville that were built without the 221D4, and those rents were all market rents. So to have a nonprofit really try to go towards this, I cannot imagine the fight that it has been to have to ultimately get that approval from HUD, and it's not in place yet, but they've been working very, very hard on that one. Then they have their pre-approval. That's fantastic. So that's really something that we can all learn from, that actually HUD will go for a mixed income development using the 221D4 program.
I just wanted to ask what was the name of that program, because you sort of ran through it really fast.
And I might suggest, if you're looking for a contact or something, talk to Sarah at the conclusion of our time here. Okay, other questions, please.
My question is there any way that, for instance, you were talking about the infill lots becoming released in Asheville. Is there any way that it could be like zoned affordable housing? Or is there any way that a person who is selling their property can put in their deed, like they have conservation easements? What about affordable housing easements? That's my question.
Really cool idea. And you can put things in your deed that restrict future development of your property as it conveys. You have to be careful, though, because a lot of those types of restrictions were used to keep certain people out of certain neighborhoods, right? And a lot of it is usually gauged towards keeping a neighborhood from becoming devalued over time. So in terms of the deed, that's an interesting idea, and I think you could do it as long as you stayed within the law somehow. In terms of zoning, we're challenged in local government. However, you can't create a zoning or a district where you're going to put all the affordable housing. And in fact, I was
thinking more like, for instance, do a percentage, like that way, meet the balance of what people can afford in the city.
Yeah, and that is an idea that has been tried in different ways. There are density bonuses we can give for, so say a developer is building on a lot where it's 10 units an acre. Well, if you can guarantee me a certain number of those units are going to be initially sold at an affordable price point, or going to be rented as subsidized housing, perhaps we can give you a density bonus and you can build 14 units on that acre. So I've seen packages like that put together. So that can be done. What you have to have is willing developers. And that's where these guys have done a really interesting job, because the successful neighborhoods are mixed and you can't tell what's affordable and what's not. We've been in a discussion in our community about, so if you have a house and it's a box, from the street, can you really tell, or does it really matter whether it's a duplex or a single family? Truthfully, it doesn't. And just think, if you could duplex all your homes, you would essentially double the number of units in a neighborhood. And the town of Waynesville had a very progressive, comprehensive plan that was adopted in 2002. It was based on a smart growth model, the 10 principles of smart growth. And one of the key decisions that was made was that we would treat, under our zoning, a duplex the same way that we treat a single-family home. And it's been really successful in Waynesville. And I think it's proven that, at least in our community, people didn't really fuss about that. And we've been talking about it a lot as we try to move forward to update our comprehensive plan, what's working and what's not. And that's one thing that really is working.
And I will note that that on the density bonus, for example, in 2014, the city of Asheville took 13 different districts that were primarily highway and commercial districts that had very low residential density allowed, in large part because of the prior theory, right, and practice that you should separate your commercial activities from your residential activities, and rezoned those to significantly increase by right the amount of residential development, and increase additionally by an additional 50% the residential development allowed if 20% of the units were affordable. And to my understanding, to this time, not one development has happened based upon that change. And so I think the question about who's developing in your community and what are they willing to develop in your community and what is the background of their kind of development keeps on bringing me back to Bruce's conversation that he's going to talk about at lunchtime about the missing middle and about how we really do work towards creating livable, dense communities.
This is for Kirk. I wanted to know if you have looked at modular, or if any of you, I guess, have looked at modular. There's so many modular systems out there now. It's not necessarily cheaper to do modular, but it is so much faster. And once you go over 5 stories, it becomes a really good thing to do, and it can be cost effective over 5 stories. So if you're talking about density, there's Prescient, there's Z Modular, there's all kinds of systems now that make it more, hotels are being built with modular now, and so it's something to be considered.
Funny you should ask. Between probably, I don't know how many houses, but before probably 2005, all we did was, even to 2008, we did modulars. Everything we did was modular. This house in South Asheville, we had 14 lots. They were all modular. This project here is all modular. Every unit is its own module. So the 1 bedroom will come from the truck as a unit. Cabinets, mirrors, lights, flooring, toilets, everything will be off the truck and stacked just like you see it. 5 on the bottom, 5 on the top. So yes, we have done it. It is good. The thing that my partners I've learned in the past is how many crews have you got that can touch it? Because unless you can touch it as a builder, if I set 2 houses in your neighborhood, and I only got 1 crew to work on one house, your other house is just kind of sitting there wrapped in plastic. It's not real pretty. But the modular, if you can save the time on getting to it once it's set, it's very good. I like it. The bankers like it because once the module's set, it's 80% complete. So you can get 80% of your loan amount right then. There are some small little things you have to worry about, like the module company wants their money when they build it. And then what is it when they build it, because it's not on real property yet. So just like this project, we have to ship off a large check to Clayton Homes to have them produce the unit, and it's sitting in Tennessee. So when they truck it, whose is it? When the crane's got it, whose is it? And then finally it's mine once it's on the foundation. So yes, we love it, and we hope to do some more of it in the future. But it does have a few little financial situations you have to work with your bankers. Yes, you can. The bankers, there's certain, your fund lawyers will tell you how to work that out for you to make sure all the paperwork's there, that the bank's covered, so the bank can actually finance it with the proper paperwork until it actually gets here. They don't like it, but they'll do it.
And Jeff, you might want to help answer this question, because I'm wondering about the community land trust model as a new thing that's might be coming on the scene here in Asheville. We're seeing it pop up in a few other places nearby, and I'm wondering if it's going to bring some new partners to the table. I wondered if you could give a quick update on what's happening with that.
I just wanted to ask you to clarify what does devalued mean? In your previous comments? In terms of if you place any kind of easements or restricted covenants, can you please clarify what you mean by devalued?
So let's take these. We have 2 last questions, and one is about the community land trust model, and the other is clarification. We'll let you do the clarification first.
Well, it's interesting because they're sort of related, but when you have a piece of property that property comes with a set of rights, right? And if you say that you're going to put some of those rights into conservation, then you can devalue by tax-wise the rights that you're paying taxes on. So say if I'm going to put a large piece of property into an environmental conservation easement that says I can't build there, then I've devalued in terms of potential development value that area. And groups like land trusts and conservation organizations can work with you on that to devalue that property so that the landowner gets the tax value.
And I'm afraid I can't give Linda a great answer on the Community Land Trust. I do know that a very active group has been meeting in Asheville. I know Nicole's been a part of that. Perhaps others in this group have. Very vibrant conversations about where that land trust should operate. The city of Asheville has made a conditional commitment of $1 million to support the investment activities for affordable housing. For that, it's conditional on land trust becoming real. Why it's an exciting concept is because it essentially removes the value of the land, which we've talked about today as being increasing a higher and higher portion of the cost of development, and holds that value of the land in community trust forever, theoretically, and therefore enables a lower income homeowner to enjoy the benefits of home ownership. The homeowner in exchange for being able to access home ownership accepts a limit on the amount of the appreciation of the value of the home that they'll accept at the time of sale. So instead of a typical revolving loan program that would finance a second mortgage on a home for someone to purchase it, then when the home sells, there's no guarantee necessarily that it will sell affordably the second time around. It benefits that one homeowner potentially very much, particularly with rising values. In this case, the property itself stays affordable through successive homeowners.
If I can piggyback on that, Jeff, the camera guy is saying to come to the middle. The community land trust is going to be now the lectern, now the microphone, following directions. So the city of Asheville has $1 million ready to go for this, but the way that this community land trust is going to be able to come into its full fruition is that this is the opportunity for community partners, institutions like medical institutions, utilities, business organizations, and other groups to be able to invest directly in affordable housing in perpetuity. We hear a lot about regulatory barriers and land cost barriers, and if we remove those and invite that investment from all of these different groups, it provides an opportunity to really make that money work in a very direct way that we don't currently have.